Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salaam Radio.
Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and welcome to Globally Local.
Globally Local on 106.2 FM. Your city, your world, and your chance to make a difference.
Yes, welcome to the show. I'm Joe Hosted, and as always, we'll be discussing local approaches to global issues. We do try when possible to focus on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, 17 ambitious goals that set out to bring an end to poverty, reduce world hunger, address inequality, combat climate change, and ultimately leave no one behind. This week, with the theme Industry, Innovation and Infrastructure, we'll be discussing how new technologies and innovative design have the ability to create a prosperous future for humanity and the planet, and in particular explore how both past and present examples of innovation have the power to further the success of the world's global goals, but may in actual fact be doing the exact opposite. Goal 9 of the Sustainable Development Goals, in simple terms, states that for a society to grow, it should encourage industries that bring opportunity to everyone while protecting the environment. These industries must also be supported by resilient infrastructure, such as reliable transport, as well as technological innovation. The time is now 11:01, and we'd love to hear from you today. So if you have any comments or questions, then you can reach us on WhatsApp 07745 278 978 or Facebook at Salaam Radio. Returning to the studio today by a very special invitation is Richard Ferris, Director of Earth Matters and Fellow Advocate for Sustainable Development. Welcome back, Richard.
Hiya.
You were my very first guest on the show, and here you are again, back for more.
You just can't get rid of me, can you?
As much as we may try. So, Richard, first of all, what are your thoughts in general about this goal for industry, innovation and infrastructure?
Well, I think the key thing is that we face multiple challenges as human beings, and at the moment, obviously, climate change, environmental destruction, etc., growing global population, and it seems pretty clear that we're coming up woefully short, actually, in terms of meeting the targets that we've set ourselves, be they these Sustainable Development Goals or others. And some people calculate that there is a funding gap of as much as $2.5 trillion. That's a huge figure in terms of what we should be spending to tackle these challenges. And really, we all know that sort of money isn't out there, or at least it's not easily accessible. It's not just about the money, though. We need to find different ways of doing things in order to actually make people's lives better and reduce inequality, and that's where innovation, new ideas comes in, and technology. I think it was Steve Jobs, the former CEO of Apple, who said innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower, and innovation isn't going to be the solution to every problem, but it's certainly going to help us move forward. It always has done, using new technologies, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And innovation is the actual word in this goal, but innovation is key across all the goals: ending poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being. Everything requires innovation. Just last time you were here, we spoke briefly about the mobile connectivity in regards to global citizenship. Mm-hmm. And here we have the target: significantly increase access to information and communications technology and strive to provide universal and affordable access to the internet in least developed countries by 2020. Almost all people around the world now live within a range of mobile cellular network signal, with 90% living with a range of 3G quality or higher. What do you think about that?
Well, used in a positive way, that's a really important development, because it allows people to access information that can improve their lives. It may well be, most of us have apps on our phones, but it may well be in the future that you'll be able to have an app that will help you identify threats to your own health. So if you have an existing condition, you have an app on your phone which is linked in some way to something that's monitoring your blood sugar levels, for example. or allows you to identify at an early stage whether you're at risk of certain diseases, and you can make lifestyle adjustments. So having access to that sort of information at your fingertips can really improve your life, and you can imagine how that could be applied to people in a work situation. Say a farmer in the field able to access an app which can identify immediately any problems with the crops that he might be growing and take early action to reduce losses. It may well be somebody in a factory working, and access to that sort of technology enables them to identify problems with the production process or malfunctions in the system and so on. So it's a way of it can reduce resources, improve health outcomes, and many, many other things. So I think we shouldn't always look at these new technologies in a negative way, but the harm that it can do to us by spending too many hours glued to our phones. If used in the right way, they can be tools for good.
Yeah, I recently saw a device that's been brought out. I can't remember what country it is, but it's a wristband that measures your DNA. Mm-hmm. And when you go into a supermarket, you can scan the barcodes on your phone, and the wristband will light up green or blue, saying whether that's good or bad for your DNA. I mean, how far have we come? That's absolutely insane. Well,
obviously, used in the right way, that's a really positive thing. Of course, there are questions about inequalities and access to that sort of technology, because I suspect that that's easy for us to access in the developed West, but in poorer, less developed countries, people don't have access to that. So we need to be careful how we use these techs. And also, of course, there are people out there, such as insurance companies, who may well, if they have access to that sort of information about our genetic predisposition to certain conditions, then it becomes harder for us to obtain insurance, or people may be discriminated against for those reasons.
And I think something we're going to talk about a lot through this show is gathering data, who holds that. But yeah, so I'm sure we'll get to that. So let's move on now to, we're here to talk about innovation, and I want to talk about innovation in food, because there's been lots of innovation with regards to food for thousands of years. One massive innovation in food is genetic modification. We domesticated corn over 10,000 years ago, and really that should have been the end of world hunger, shouldn't it?
Yes, you could argue, yeah.
But it's not. So with these innovations, how are we using them? Are we using them to the best of our ability?
I mean, I think the point that needs to be made is, of course, there are many factors that contribute to world hunger, and food waste would be another one. But given the challenge that we face, that by 2050 we will have 9 billion mouths to feed on this planet, we're currently at 7 billion, so we're going to see a 2 billion increase in the next 30 years. That presents us with a huge challenge, and we need to embrace all kinds of options that are open to us. Now, the whole idea of genetic modification, people use terms like Frankenstein foods. I think that's unhelpful, personally, because, as you've pointed out, domestication of corn was effectively an example of how we intervened to change something for our own betterment. That's what we're talking about here. And GMOs, as they're called, genetically modified organisms, have the potential to increase food production and thereby address global hunger. Don't we have a moral argument then in favour of genetic modification? We seem to be reasonably comfortable with the idea of modifying genes in human beings to prevent the development of deleterious diseases and conditions. And yet, when it comes to food, comes to plants, we take a slightly different attitude. And yet, if you modify a crop so that it's resistant to insects and disease, and thereby we don't need to spray those crops with dangerous chemicals, isn't that something that's good?
Yeah.
And yet we've got into this very polarised debate. You're either for genetic modification or you're against it. And, you can create crops that become tolerant to stresses, to drought or to extreme temperature. And given climate change predictions, again, if we've got crops that can resist very hot conditions, it enables certain countries in the world to grow crops for their own consumption and for export in a changing environment, whereas at the moment, many of those countries will find that the droughts and the famines that they currently experience are going to be 10 times worse in coming decades.
Yeah. You kind of hit the nail on the head there when you said these technologies have the potential. That seems to be the recurring theme with all of these, that we discover that we can make these things happen, and it has the potential to do this, to do that, but we just always seem to miss the mark. Very rarely, well, I suppose it's the media as well, because why would they promote good news like we've just done this, or we've just done
yes.
that? Unless Global Citizen, of course, they love to promote good things like that. What do you think about this new organic spray that you can spray on vegetables and fruit to make them last longer? Have you heard of this?
I hadn't, but I mean, just my initial reaction to that is a good thing, because we've got real problems with food waste, and it's the overlooked sort of elephant in the room. Really, we talk about the need to produce more food in the first place, but actually, if we could reduce waste, because at the moment it's something like 50% of total food by weight is wasted before it's even consumed.
Wow.
And, people locally, there's some great stuff going on in this city where people are taking food that's past its sell-by date from supermarkets and using it to cook nutritious meals for people, or using it in food banks. Anything that keeps food fresher for longer, as long as it's carbon neutral, I would suggest, is going to be a good thing. Because if we can do something to reduce those losses, and improve the conditions in storage. I mean, particularly, actually, it's a problem in developing world countries where they don't have adequate storage facilities for food, and an awful lot of food gets wasted before it's even transported to where it's needed. So I'd say that seems like a good thing.
Yes, there is also a problem, isn't there, with genetic modification, whereby the people producing the food at the highest level are changing the modification of the genes so that when the end receiver receives the food, you can't then take the seeds and grow them yourself.
Right.
That seems like a huge step back for me.
Yeah, I think we're talking about some of the ethics around innovation here, and one of the problems is the high-tech companies that do a lot of this work obviously invest a huge amount of money in it for themselves, and they want to hold on to that financial benefit or gain, and it's about getting these big companies signed up to things like the SDGs, getting them to see the benefits of being engaged with doing the right thing rather than simply thinking in profit terms. And that is one of the fears, is that things like genetic modification remain in the hands of huge multinationals, and that creates even greater inequality between the big farmers, the big conglomerates, and the small farmers, possibly organic farmers operating at a smaller scale.
Yeah. So I would just like to move on to innovation in packaging, because it's something I see a lot about online. There's always new companies bringing out new ways to package. I mean, with Amazon and with a lot of these large retail stores online now, everybody's having everything delivered. Everything comes in its own box. And I see lots of innovative ideas. It just seems to take a super long time for them to surface.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things going on. It's a sector where there's a lot of innovation, potential innovation, and it feels as though, yes, the world is waking up to the fact that we've got a huge and long-lasting impact from inappropriate management of packaging, and particularly plastic. I mean, that's the thing people have really focused on, and in particular, that plastic when it gets into our oceans. I know we live a long way from the sea here, and this might seem a little bit alien to people, but there are 5 gigantic garbage patches in the world's oceans at the moment.
I did not know there was 5.
Yeah, and it's estimated that up to 2.4 million tons of plastic are entering our oceans every year. Now, just to give you a bit of context, the largest of these, which is known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, so it feels like it's a long way away from here, being in the Pacific, has a surface area of 1.6 million square kilometres, 3 times the size of France. Okay?
Wow.
Now, some clever guy has worked out there are 1.8 trillion plastic pieces in that patch alone. That equates to 250 pieces of plastic per person for every person on the planet. Yeah, so that's a bit
astonishing.
mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So that tells you the scale of the problem. Now, people who are involved in packaging innovation are looking at a number of things. They're looking at recycling. So they're looking at the reuse of plastic in bottles, for example. My concern about that is how energy efficient is it? How many times can you keep recycling plastic bottles without microplastics, small plastic fragments getting lost in the process? Innovative design using less material and reducing the volume. You mentioned the sort of online packaging that people order stuff from large warehouses. It gets sent out. You get a huge box, most of which is air. Now, if you think about how much space that takes in a lorry, how much, therefore, is being transported around empty space, using up fuel and emitting carbon. Yeah. And then, of course, there are innovative ideas using biomaterials such as seaweed and mushroom compost material, which, of course, is renewable and biodegradable. Made from crop waste. Now, the thing about that, one of the little side benefits is you're buying a waste product from the farmer who then has got a new income stream and a reason to reinvest in growing mushrooms or bamboo or whatever else it is that you've decided to use for packaging. So lots of exciting things like that. And hopefully it's a field where, because of the scale of the problem and the cost of disposing of unwanted packaging materials, there's a strong driver there for businesses to actually do the right thing.
Yeah. I did see recently, I think it was like a TED talk, about a gentleman in Australia who has recognised that one of the problems with single-use plastics is that they have no value. That's why they're on the street, because people will go round and they will collect aluminium cans because they can go and get money for them because it has a monetary value. So what he's asked is he's getting all the major plastic manufacturers together, and he's asking them to raise their prices so that then there is more of a monetary value on plastic, and then less will be going into landfill. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, those of us who are a little bit older remember things like Corona and how you'd get money back on your glass bottles. So you'd have a bottle of pop, which, wasn't great for your health. But as kids, we were excited by the fact we could get, I don't know what it was, a shilling or whatever back by returning those. And I know there are some schemes to do that with plastic bottles, that you can dispense them and you get credit tokens or something. I think they're trialling that in parts of Scandinavia, for example.
Yeah, I was in Norway at the weekend, and I actually took a bag of cans and put them into the machine, and you see the Corona register. It's fantastic. And I know in Italy, they have similar machines that... you can print off a bus ticket or a train ticket. You can put it in, and then I suppose you validate it when you get on there. But these things have been around in the rest of Europe for a long time. Not sure why they're not over here yet. We're a bit slow sometimes, I think, in taking these things up. But one of the things I was reading about yesterday is a really exciting little thing. Are these little water pods? I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're like almost like a little plastic ball, and they're made from seaweed, and they can be flavoured and they can be coloured to make them more attractive. They're completely biodegradable and edible. And interestingly, the London Marathon last year introduced them as a way of aiming to reduce unwanted plastic bottles by 215,000 on the London Marathon course. And so these things were handed out to runners as they went along. Really convenient way of getting water into your system. You just bite into them and swallow the whole lot. Yeah.
And if you don't fancy the plastic cover, and it degrades in 4 to 6 weeks anyway, which contrasts with plastic bottles, which break down anything up to 450, 500 years for a plastic bottle to break down.
Wow.
So,
and it doesn't biodegrade, does it? It only ever gets smaller until it's in our food, it's in our water.
Exactly.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Seaweed is actually one of the massive ingredients, if you like, in innovation with regards to packaging and with regards to lots of things. And bamboo is another one. Because we've been using that that's not innovation, it's just kind of being switched on about it. It's maybe learning from the rest of the world who have it growing all the time. So there, you did mention about the plastic in the ocean, and I see lots of machines, and I see lots of little clips online of ways that we are trying to get the plastic out of the ocean. Do you know any of those?
Yeah, there's been all kinds of non-governmental organisations, charities developing plastic collectors that either drift along in the ocean that sort of suck things into a storage pod, or bigger machines with great big booms that collect it up. I mean, whether we can upscale that sufficiently, because as I described, that Pacific garbage patch 3 times the size of France. I mean, how do you start to make an impact on that? Again, I think there are probably researchers working away at ways that, pardon the pun, nibble away at this problem. Because we've got to get it. We've actually got to pick this stuff up, because the longer it's left there bobbing around, or out there in the environment, it's breaking down, but it's not disappearing, as you made the point. All it does is break down into ever smaller particles, which, because of this interconnected world we live in, they end up back in our bodies at some point, especially if people are eating products from the sea, fish and shell food, etc., because that's getting into their systems. We're eating that, it's getting into our own systems. So we're all walking around today full of bits of plastic.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's really horrible to think about, and it's only going to get worse. And so, like, when I imagine the future, I imagine filters on every tap where they have to filter out as much as they can. One thing that just did come to mind is I think it's Denmark. You can go kayaking for free on their river, as long as you bring back plastic. And there are lots of coffee shops along beaches, I see, that will say to you, if you bring back a bucket of plastic, you can have a free coffee.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be technical. Innovation doesn't have to be technical. It's just small things like this will all make a difference, especially on a national scale. If a country like Denmark were to implement that everywhere, it could work really well.
Yeah, and actually here in the UK, if you go to a number of places around the coast, you'll find that local authorities and again charities like Surfers Against Sewage are installing litter pickers and bags for people to pick up when they're going for a walk along the beach. Just pick them up and spend 10 minutes picking up plastic and unwanted other waste from the beach, put it in a bag, tie it up and deposit it again back on the seafront. And I can think of a small cafe that I visited in Sheringham in Norfolk, and they were doing a similar thing. You go into the cafe and you could pick up a litter picker, and it's amazing how with children it becomes a really good game. How much can you collect in 5 minutes or whatever?
Yeah, I think that's key as well. It's trying to get families involved. If you can make it a family activity, and you're teaching your child then that this stuff shouldn't be on the ground. We should be looking after our planet a bit better. It's going to be in your food when you're older, that sort of thing. So education, I think, there's lots of innovation in education. We're using technology all the time, and it's built into the curriculum now, isn't it? Children have to learn how to code because it's just the way that we're going.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of classrooms have iPads, and it's just becoming a huge part of our world.
And it's going to be one of those areas, of course, which in the future, that's where there's going to be a growth in jobs. And so, these young people growing up with the ability to do coding and to understand these technologies are going to be really valuable resources.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a good thing, because if you turn these technologies to good ends, such as we're discussing here, it's got the potential to really revolutionise our relationship with the planet and with resources.
Indeed, yeah. And while we're talking about coding, I think app development in this day and age is hugely important with regards to innovation to save our world, because I could list any number of apps that I have on my phone that help me make better choices. I'll start with Ulio. Are you familiar with Ulio?
What does that do then, Joe?
Ulio is it's an app whereby if you don't want something, if you have if you buy a large number of things and you only want a small portion of them, you can take a picture and you can post it, and people nearby can go and find.
Okay.
I saw one when I was living in London. there was 100 cans of Tesco's own lager, and the description said "prank gone wrong," which did pique my interest, but unfortunately I didn't make it. But Ulio and Too Good To Go is another one, where the restaurants who are reducing their food at the end of the day, they put it on there, and so you can get an alert about reduced food, and you can go. And Too Good To Go is actually, I would say, one of the most popular ones at the moment. Can you think of any other?
Well, I mean, I'm just fascinated by that because I've been trying to do a similar thing when I used to get a veg box. I used to end up with too much cabbage. So I then started, but I did it in a kind of old-fashioned way, just communicated by mouth with my neighbours. So anything that makes that more efficient, such as an app, has got to be a good thing. So lots of good technology.
Yeah, we're not talking anymore. That's the problem, isn't it? We're not talking to our neighbours, and which is why these things are key. Because everybody's always on their phone. That seems to be how it is.
Yeah, I think we're not going to win that battle, though, overnight. So let's go with it and use it for positive things.
Okay, you are listening to Globally Local on 106.2 FM. We will be back shortly talking more innovation.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Where can you get high quality and low prices? Amar Food Store and Halal Meat in Lincoln Road, Triangle is the place to go. Pay us a visit and take advantage of our special offers and great range of products on groceries, vegetables, fruits and halal meat. Also send money to Pakistan absolutely free. We have all top brands at special offers, offer free customer parking and provide a free local delivery service. Amar Food Store and Halal Meat, 613B Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call us on 01733 687 374. High in quality, low in prices.
There's a million choices available for dining out in Leeds.
But if you want something special, there's only one name to remember.
Mumtaz Leeds.
Relax in our newly refurbished Riverside restaurant.
Enjoy exquisite home cooking from our brand new menu. Upgrade to the Mumtaz Leeds experience.
And the price? Well, we're better value than ever before.
Mumtaz Leeds, Chadwick Street, Leeds, LS10 1PJ. Call 0113 242 4211.
Free car parking available.
कोई रत्तियां कमीज़ानी लमाना मारे मामा मिठियां में चीज़ानी।
मेरा नाम मुकद्दस है और कोट मेरा घर है और ये मेरे लिए किसी जन्नत से कम नहीं। हमारे भी कुछ ख्वाब हैं जिनकी ताबीर को हमें पाना है।
आइए इन बच्चों के ताबनाक मुस्तकबिल के लिए अपना हिस्सा डालिए। अपनी ज़कात, सदकात, खैरात और इमदाद कोट को दीजिए।
UK number 0300 123 774. Website court.org.uk.
Almirad Tiles. With over 70 stores nationwide, we are now open in Peterborough. Up to 50% discount offers now on. Largest selection of tiles. Full bathroom suites from only £189. Paint, LED lighting, laminate flooring from only £7.99. Over 1,000 designs of wallpaper in stock. We have everything you need. Come and visit us at 193 Fengate, Peterborough, PE1 5BH, or call us on 01733 34 58 47. Almirad Tiles, now open.
In the mood for some authentic Desi food? Try Desi Restaurant on Lincoln Road. Start your day right with our Desi breakfast. Every day from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Halva puri, channa, nihari, paya, paratha and omelette. Need a tasty lunch? Every day 1 to 4 p.m. we've got fast food, pizzas, kebab sandwiches, tandoori dishes, balti dishes, biryanis and much more. We're also open every evening 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. Try our Desi Tawa special or our fresh handi, 1 kg chicken or lamb on the bone, cooked to order. Eat in, take away or free delivery. Visit desirestaurant.co.uk to view the full menu and order online. 60-seat capacity and a private function room. Catering service also available. Desi Restaurant, 298 Lincoln Road, Peterborough, PE1 2ND. Call us now on 555 795.
Peterborough's community radio station.
Welcome back to Globally Local, where we explore ways in which we can create a better world for all life on Earth. We do try, when possible, to base our conversations around the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, 17 ambitious goals that set out to end poverty, reduce inequality, and tackle climate change. I'm Joe Hosted, and this week with the theme Industry, Innovation and Infrastructure, we're discussing how humanity is using innovation in the 21st century, and how that it is both helping and hindering our prosperity. Our guest today is Richard Ferris from Earth Matters. The time is now 11:30, and remember, if you've any comments or questions during the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on WhatsApp 07745 278 978 or Facebook Salaam Radio. So Richard, let's talk artificial intelligence.
Let's. And it's a term which I think freaks a few people out because artificial intelligence, or AI for short, people think of it purely in terms of robots, but we're talking about basically a machine's ability to simulate human intelligence. So actions that were once considered unique to humans, learning and logic, reasoning, perception, even creativity, are now being replicated by technology and used in lots of industries.
Yes. And when we talk about AI, we're not talking about robots specifically.
No.
The majority of what we're talking about is when you're on your phone and you need to get somewhere.
Yeah, I think people need to realise actually AI is around us all the time already. It's part of the fabric of our daily lives. If you're using Google, for example, AI is used to power predictive Google searches and Spotify music recommendations. Yeah. Facial recognition, which is a bit of a controversial issue at the moment. A lot of talk about that. That's used by Facebook, for example. But, even focusing on some positives, improving the diagnosis of various diseases, fighting wildlife poaching, improving crop yields, improving the efficiency of what you call your supply chain, moving goods and services around the country. All those things are benefiting from AI. So, it's a positive thing.
Yes. But again, I think for AI to work to the best of its ability, it needs to collect data, doesn't it?
It does, and then that's when I think people start getting worried because they think about personal data. So it needs to be done in a way that's managed, and there needs to be kind of certain ethical code about the way in which we go forward with the use, the application of AI.
But we are using it every day. I think most people don't even realise.
Absolutely.
So I was on the website AI for Global Goals, and it says, it is widely recognised that achieving the global goals requires strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. Artificial intelligence, or AI, among other technologies, has been a source of great promise in all these areas. It has been estimated that the global GDP could be up to 14% higher in 2030 as a result of AI. I mean, that's a huge difference in GDP. And I think it's important to say at this point that we actually had a comment online, and I just wanted to speak a little bit more about it, that achieving the global goals is a delicate balance between social protection and GDP. Because to make things happen, you need to have money, but you need to spend that money in the right way to look after your citizens. Would you agree? Absolutely. I mean, it would be difficult to calculate, but I'm sure it's not beyond our abilities. How much can AI improve well-being by 2030? And perhaps if we had that figure alongside that 14% increase in GDP, the potential to improve the quality of people's lives. Yes, it does say here it's an equivalent of $15.7 trillion. That's a huge amount of money. Yes. So I'd like to talk then about goal 3, because artificial intelligence has the potential, as we say, to address the majority of those targets. One of which being target 3.6, by 2020, half the number of global deaths and injuries from road and traffic accidents.
Well, it's absolutely tragic, the number of people who are killed on not just Britain's roads, but globally. And, there's a lot of research going on into what you call autonomous vehicles, so driverless vehicles, to put it simply. And this does have the potential to revolutionise transport and how we get around. And I know that we have a lot of listeners who are out there driving their taxis here in Peterborough at the moment who might go, autonomous vehicles are putting us out of work.
Yeah.
That is one of the issues we have to think about, actually. But in terms of safety, autonomous vehicles, driverless vehicles, have the potential, if the AI is used correctly, to eliminate almost entirely the risk of people having serious accidents, because they're programmed to take evasive action at all times to protect the passenger in that vehicle. However, when you think it through, if that vehicle is in a situation of immediate danger and it takes evasive action to, say, avoid another vehicle that's malfunctioning or something on the wrong side of the road, in taking that evasive action, what happens if that evasive action means that you run down a pedestrian or something, So the way that AI, the way those vehicles are programmed is essential. And one of the things that crossed my mind, and I don't know if there's anyone out there who knows about this, is what risk is there that the artificial intelligence systems can be hacked by hackers? Because hackers are usually one step ahead of everything we do.
Yeah, I think everything could be hacked.
And then I think to myself, could that create chaos on our roads? So whilst there's a potential to reduce deaths if it's used properly, that technology needs very careful management. And I touched on the idea that it could put people out of work, people who drive vehicles for a living. That's one of the things about AI. It has the potential to revolutionise the job market, to take away some of the I don't want to be careful with the words I'm using, but some of the jobs that don't require high specialist skills. And you could say that improves the quality of life for some people. If someone's working on a production line doing a very, very dull job and it can be done using AI, it's a great thing if it liberates that person, but only if that person either has the money to spend in their leisure time or the qualifications to get a better job.
Yeah.
So taking away the duller, more mundane jobs and replacing them with highly technical jobs could be a very positive thing for human beings to stop boredom, etc., and look after our well-being. But it could lead in poorer countries to people simply not having any work options at all.
Yes, you just mentioned about the ethics of AI. Should we trust the machines? And I actually recently just rewatched iRobot, fantastic film. And there's a scene in there where two cars are ran off the road. They both go down. One's got a small child in, and the other one's got a grown man. And the actor or the character watches the robot dive down and takes him out. Watches this young girl suffer, all because the robot had calculated the risk. And that's what we're doing with these machines. We say, look, you make the best decision. We'll give you this information, and you do what's best. And it's terrifying.
Yes, and I think we're right to talk about these issues, because if we don't talk about them now and address the ethical angle and also the potential for AI to widen the inequalities on planet Earth. I mean, we've talked about all the positive things that you can use it for, but if you stop to think about where are the big companies doing this innovative work, they're generally in China and other countries in South and Southeast Asia, in North America and in Europe. The countries where that AI could be beneficially applied often aren't so much in those countries, but are in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and yet they don't have access to the technology. So those people who have access to it can use it to their benefit, and it just increases the divisions and the inequalities in the world. So we need to find a way of rolling it out and making it accessible for people across the planet.
Yeah. One thing I do really like is the technology that's been invested in helping people with disabilities communicate. So having tablets with software loaded on, and it can predict what they're going to say, or they tap in a few different letters, and suddenly they can have a conversation, and it's giving people who haven't been able to speak before a voice, and that really is reducing an inequality.
Absolutely, it's reducing social isolation and giving people that ability to connect and become part of normal society again. And it's not just obviously with communication, that's one thing, but it's also the access issue. Technology is allowing people to regain the use of their limbs after catastrophic accidents or illness. So enabling people to walk again, enabling people to have that mobility to access the things that we take for granted every day.
That does bring us on to innovation in bioengineering, which is something I did want to talk about, because bioengineering is another huge grey area, isn't it? Where does it end? Bioengineering obviously is using technology on the human body or on living things, and maybe trying to incorporate the two. So I know now that you can already pick the gender of your child in some parts of the world, and their eye colour, their hair colour, and I think that's incredibly dangerous. But again, also still has the potential to do a lot of good.
I mean, I think we're right to be concerned about it, because some of this has smacks of some of the philosophies that we've seen associated with the Nazis, for example, around eye colour, what the perfect human being looks like. But we should not throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I think we need to look at how bioengineering can do positive things. When you bear in mind that there are huge numbers of people die every year from entirely preventable diseases such as malaria. 445,000 people died from malaria in 2016 alone. We can use technology to modify mosquito populations so that female mosquitoes stop producing eggs.
So you say modify, do you mean eradicate?
You can, it depends how you do it. You could say you could eradicate mosquitoes, and wouldn't that be great if that meant that there was no malaria, especially if you live in a country where malaria is prevalent, and believe me, with climate change it could become prevalent in southern Europe and it could move northwards. Surely we have a moral obligation to do the right thing, to look after those people. But there's always a but, isn't there? If we did go down the route of eradicating mosquitoes, as an ecologist, someone that's into nature, etc., I tend to think, what impact would that have on the rest of the animals and plants out there? Now, mosquitoes are food for fish, bats and birds. If you eliminate mosquitoes from a habitat, what are those bats, birds and other predators going to live off? And also, if you eliminate mosquitoes, male mosquitoes are important pollinators. They carry pollen between plants and help those plants produce seed and so there's always an upside and a downside, but I think if we can use that gene technology, that biotechnology, to reduce the prevalence of disease and prevent people dying from it, we have a moral obligation to do so.
It's interesting hearing you give that side of the argument, because I have this conversation a lot of the time with a lot of people, because it would save thousands, if not millions, of lives, or just it will dramatically reduce suffering. But is it our place to intervene? It's the what's the name? The trolley experiment, isn't it? When the train is going down, and do you stay on the track and kill 4 people that are strapped down, or do you divert and intentionally just kill one? It's that moral dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because people like us living in the developed and wealthy West can afford to have this conversation. If you and I was a parent of a child with malaria in sub-Saharan Africa, I think we might see things rather differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know people will say, well, if you eliminate disease, then it's just adding to the global population increase and exacerbating our problems. But I'm not sure that's necessarily follows, because if you eliminate the risk of disease from some of these societies, then people would make different choices about the size of the family they have.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
A lot of ethical concerns here, and I know that there are concerns about the way AI can be developed in terms of discriminating against people. I mean, I'm not going to name a specific event, but you think about social media use. AI can enable our tablets, our phones, etc., to show us content which is specifically suited to ideas that we've already formed. So who we might vote for in an election, what we think about particular issues. And so what happens is that sort of control that artificial intelligence and app developers have can strengthen our preconceived ideas, leading to people having very polarized positions on issues.
Yeah.
And we've just seen this country go through a real change, a massive political decision to leave the European Union. And people talk about how you're either in or you're out. And there's no in between. People are very extreme about it.
Yeah.
And that's been fed to some degree by AI. And politicians are doing it. The Russian President Putin and the American President, and who knows, our own Prime Minister. Their advisors use these technologies to put messages out to reinforce their particular views and strengthen those preconceptions that people have. And it can be very disadvantageous to people who are already discriminated against. Be that women and children, be it people of different ethnicity, different colours, different religions. And so that's one of the dangers if we're not really in control of this.
Yeah, and it's difficult, I think, to keep AI impartial because everybody's always got an opinion and they believe that their opinion is the best, and they will therefore think that how they use AI is the way forward, the true way. So how do we ever really find the middle ground, everybody working together and not just sides pitted against each other with two extreme opinions?
I said that's the million dollar question, isn't it?
Not the answer, Richard.
I disappoint you. I don't have the answer.
Sponsors are waiting for it.
I've got lots of ideas about how AI and technology can be great and do some fantastic things for the environment and of addressing health problems and food, but unless we have a proper code of practice developed, I do have some serious fears, because it does feel that at the moment we've got people in society or people in positions of power who don't have the same ethical concerns that we have. They wouldn't even entertain this discussion we're having today.
So I'd just like to move on to AI and drones, because like you say, just like mobile phones, we're using this technology for to solve some huge problems, to better people's lives. And drones, actually, more than ever before, drones play key problem-solving roles in a variety of sectors, including defence, agriculture, natural disaster relief, security and construction. With their ability to increase efficiency and improve safety, drones have become more important tools for everyone, from firefighters to farmers.
I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, if you look at when the word drone is used in the news media, it's usually used in conjunction with a second word, strike, and you hear about drone strikes. So the way in which drones are being used by the military for surgical warfare purposes, which don't involve putting boots on the ground and endangering lives, well, they pretty well endanger the lives of those people they're targeting. But let's be positive about it. As you mentioned there, the potential use in agriculture and environmental problem solving. Drones and satellite, other remote imaging technologies can be used to identify vegetation types from the air in ways that we simply don't have the capacity to do at the moment, over very large areas, collecting huge amounts of data, processing that, and they can use it to identify, for example, whether a crop or an area is at impending risk of drought or insect attack, etc. And as a result of that, you can then take the right evasive action to protect your crops or to ensure that flooding or other natural disasters are mitigated. So drones and other technologies like this can be used for really positive positive reasons.
Yeah, and they can be.
Yeah, and they are being, but they
yeah.
don't get enough attention, I don't think.
Yeah, they don't. I do just want to ask you about AI's role in jobs and economic growth, because goal number 8, I believe, is decent work and economic growth, which means providing opportunity and good jobs for people all over. So everybody has a chance to work. They can earn the money that they need to live. They can further themselves, etc., etc. But AI is actually taking a lot of jobs away from people, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit about how the future is going to be a highly technical future, and children learning coding, etc., at school are going to fall into jobs in this sector. But we don't know that AI will create enough jobs to compensate for the losses as well. Because as I mentioned earlier, some of the mundane type of jobs that perhaps people are in, low paid jobs, not actually helping their health and well-being, could be taken away by AI. And I can see the benefit of that, freeing people up to do something more worthwhile, something that's more fulfilling. But I think we need to think very carefully, because if we are going to put a lot of people out of jobs, whilst it might be okay in the developed West where high-tech replacement jobs will be available, if again we look at Southern Asia or Latin America or Sub-Saharan Africa, we take away many of these types of jobs, the low-skilled jobs. Where do those people go?
Yeah.
Unless they've had the educational opportunities to acquire the skills for a more technological job, form of employment, they're going to be cast aside onto the unemployment tip.
Yeah, which is only really in the Western world, where we're investing so much money in educating young people on how to use these technologies. I mean, in some parts of the world, it's not even considered.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't. You'd have no training in anything technical until maybe you decided you wanted to do something at university level.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to know actually how many high-tech AI type startup companies are there in, say, Malawi or in Chile compared with China or the US, and I suspect that it's very few. And unless we can upscale that, we may need to be very careful and explore new models for how society is going to look post-work. Yeah. If we're going to put people out of work, what are people going to do with their time?
Yeah,
I can think of plenty of exciting opportunities for people to engage with the natural environment, but I would say that because I love it. Not everyone enjoys gardening or going out and planting trees.
Yeah.
And what does post-work politics look like if people have got idle hands, and all that? So we do need to be very careful. And I do think, it's easy for us to sit here, educated, lucky enough, fortunate enough to go to university and acquire skills. But for many people, that option still doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And after all, we're here to discuss local approaches to global issues. So it's always important to bear that in mind. So let's talk about AI in energy then, or just energy in general. I mean, there's been huge innovative progress over the past, 10 years towards renewable energies. Battery technology is massively improved. We're investing more and more money into wind power, solar power, hydropower. So the innovation is there, it's actually probably one of the fastest growing innovation kind of sectors contributing towards the global goals.
Well, it is, because I think what's captured people's attention is the global warming, the climate change threat that we face, and so many of those industries that are contributing to the problem of carbon emissions, such as the aviation industry, have got to be seen to be taking this carefully. Otherwise, they're going to be shot out of the water as people start to vote with their feet and say, "Well, we aren't going to fly. We're not going to take long haul flights." And there was, I did hear on the radio this morning somebody talking about battery capacity and how they're, rather than trying to invent an entirely new passenger jet, which would have to go through a huge number of regulatory checks. They're starting off very small. They're looking at small 9-seater planes and how they can change battery technology for that. And they're really optimistic that will be rolled out within the next 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So battery-powered planes up to 9-seater, and then they said another 2 or 3 years beyond that for planes sort of 40, 50 capacity.
Yeah.
So it's moving forward really, really quickly.
That's fantastic.
And there are other things as well, of course, which can be done. I mean, I know things like generating electricity from wind and solar. AI can be used to change the direction that your wind turbines are facing to maximise their output, depending on how weather patterns change. So lots of stuff.
Yeah,
really
brilliant.
Good.
It's exciting to hear. You know, it's fantastic to hear that there are so many innovations and innovative ideas and designs in the world that are helping towards contributing to the global goals and just to a better world for everyone. Thank you for joining us today, Richard. Always a pleasure, never a chore. Remember, if you've missed any of today's show or simply want to listen again, you can catch up on the Salaam Radio Facebook or visit their YouTube. Just search Salaam Radio. I'm Joe Hosted. This has been Globally Local, and we're live at 11 a.m. on the first and third Tuesday of every month. Thanks for listening. Assalamu alaikum. God bless, and may the goals be always with you.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.